Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to weave out the lies so we can get to the facts. Internal turmoil has erupted at MSNBC following the revelation that Morning Joe co-hosts Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski held a private meeting with former President Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. The move has reportedly sparked fierce criticism from their own colleagues and viewers alike. Network staffers are expressing outrage over what they view as a betrayal of the network's editorial stance. One MSNBC employee, speaking on condition of anonymity, condemned the meeting as an act of cowardice, telling Fox that the hosts were doing exactly what anti-Trump historian Tim Snyder warns on our air not to do: obey in advance. The backlash has spread beyond the network's internal ranks, with prominent MSNBC figures publicly voicing their disapproval. But before we get into all of that, let's take a look at what these esteemed co-host or Morning Joe had to say when they announced they met with Trump.
Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we?
Amazing. Trump's victory is so complete, Morning Joe has fully surrendered. MSNBC host Katie Phang took to X to criticize the meeting, stating, "Normalizing Trump is a bad idea." Which a lot of us political commentators have been saying for the longest is that they don't want Trump humanized. They want to paint him as some big bad villain. Badly, might I add. Fox reported that the controversial meeting marks the first time in 7 years that Scarborough and Brzezinski have met with Trump, following a dramatic falling out after his 2016 election victory. Mika and Joe, once criticized for their friendly coverage of Trump during the 2016 Republican primary, later became some of his most vocal critics. Most likely because the money is good. Just look at this comparison for contrast from what they used to say to now. It's almost music to my ears.
Says that the news network that is most critical of him should be taken off the air. This is not a reach. I could go back and talk about Nazi Germany, and I do it without any concerns whatsoever. And if people can't start drawing the parallels, well, you're just stupid, or you have your head in the sand, or you're one of them.
What changed Joe? In 2 weeks, Morning Joe has gone from Trump is Hitler to Cat Turd has too much power over Trump's cabinet nominees, attempting to defend their actions, stated, "We're not here to defend or normalize Donald Trump. We know that already. They've been on a mission to do the opposite of normalizing Donald Trump since 2016. Don't stop now, am I right?" The hosts noted that the meeting covered sensitive topics including abortion, because of course, mass deportation and threats of retribution against political opponents and media outlets, which in my opinion is what they're really terrified of because the mainstream media all know they're crooked. Brzezinski characterized the encounter as an attempt to restart communications. But I, for one, second that when it comes to what Eric Trump had to say here, when we say they have lost all credibility. Take a look.
Listen, my father won the popular vote by, 5 million votes? The largest electoral college, victory in 50, 60 years in this country. And clearly he had a media that was 98% against him every single day. And by the way, Sean, let me just remind you, this is the same media that we as a family knew so well. You see Joe and Mika on MSNBC every single morning, and they're trashing him every morning. I mean, they used to spend half the weekends at Mar-a-Lago. They were there all the time with my father, right? This is Oprah. Oprah, another person who used to love going to Mar-a-Lago. Erin Burnett, right? Same thing, was always, always around. We'd have lunch with her in Trump Tower all the time. The Anderson Coopers, the Don Lemons. I mean, we literally knew them all, and they loved us, right? They loved us. Donnie Deutsch, he was begging to be on The Apprentice. They loved us until my father decided to go down that escalator, and then like this, it all changed, right? It just all changed. It was a pile-on all day, every single day. They knew his heart and soul. They knew us as a family. They were friends of ours. And it all changed when he went down that escalator. But clearly they got the American people wrong, because no matter how bad their coverage was, my father had maybe the most decisive victory in the history of American politics. And so I think the media has, a lot of inward reflection to do. I'm not actually sure if they're capable of doing it, because they are elitist and, they pretend to be smarter than everybody else, and what they say goes, right? And we've seen that for years and years and years. But I do think that the media in this country has less credibility than it's ever had before. Hence the reason that the podcasts are doing so well. Hence the reason that Joe Rogan's doing so well. Hence the reason when my father goes on with Elon Musk on Twitter Spaces, he had 2.1 billion total impressions, from that. I mean, the landscape of the media is changing drastically because the American people do not trust them.
Yeah, well said. We are the news now. They are simply not anymore. MSNBC ratings have entirely collapsed. Joy Reid, down 54.6%. Ari Melber, down 49.6%. Chris Hayes, down 47.2%. Alex Wagner, down 53.6%. Morning Joe, down 39.6%. Stephanie Ruhle, down 67%. Andrea Mitchell, down 39.7%. I mean, shocker, right? The controversy has sparked calls for a boycott from some viewers, raising concerns about potential damage to MSNBC's reputation, as if it could get worse. Speaking of worse, we have one of the worst takes when it came to Morning Joe's meeting with Trump coming from none other than The View, when probably the worst host on the panel had this to say.
Look, the bottom line is that America needs a free press that is willing to speak truth to power right now, more than ever. And I think that we have to be very clear-eyed when we think about the president-elect and cover the president-elect. And I don't think you need to sit down for 90 minutes at Mar-a-Lago and kiss his ring to be able to speak truth and to be able to cover a story. So maybe they're not journalists in the true sense. Maybe they're saying that they're opinion journalists. But we have to remember that Trump is the guy who ushered in the era of fake news. He is the guy who ushered in alternative facts. He is the guy who attacked 3 black female journalists. He's the guy that revoked Jim Acosta's press credentials for asking him a question. And so I think that this president-elect, I hate to say it, would like nothing more than to have only Fox News cover him, would like nothing more than a state-sponsored media. And I don't think he can be trusted in the way that other presidents can be trusted. This is an aberration.
Sunny Hostin stumbles into realization that Morning Joe hosts are not journalists. First-time Sunny Hostin is absolutely right about it. Wow, unbelievable. You want to know what's even better than that? They joked about MSNBC being sold, which literally could happen because their ratings are tanking fast, quick, and in a hurry. Now, watch this. It's incredible when you realize there's always truth behind a joke.
Now for a look at some of the other stories making headlines this morning. Comcast, which owns our parent company NBC Universal, plans to spin off its cable TV networks. That's according to the Wall Street Journal and people familiar with the situation. The company will separate off entertainment and news channels, including MSNBC, CNBC, USA, Oxygen, E, Sci-Fi, and the Golf Channel.
So it's spinning off.
The new cable venture will reportedly have have an ownership structure that mirrors Comcast's. Comcast spokesperson declined to comment.
So Willie, as you look at the screen right there, the big concern that stockholders right now on Wall Street are wondering about before they decide what to do with Comcast shares is whether Mika is going to have to give up her penthouse perch atop the Comcast
First
building.
thought I had
Since
to
I
what
never
happens
had it.
to the when are we going to get invited to the penthouse?
Never. They never let us up. I will say really quickly on this, Drudge at the top said, like news meltdown, all this other stuff. I mean, I could be completely wrong. We could all be fired a year from now or whenever this happens. You never know what's going to happen.
Or tomorrow.
But in this case, though, Willie, what they're doing is what other media firms are doing. You spin off the cable channels, which 7 years ago were making a ton of money. Now they've got to figure out how to make them profitable.
It would be even more shocking if they lasted until a year from now. I suspect they get more views of MSNBC clips on X than on their network. I guess we'll have to wait and see, but if I was a betting man, I'd just short this company. This might be the last couple of months we see of these talking heads on this propaganda network, and thank God Almighty for that Christmas gift. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, send us a comment, and let us know what you think about the facts here on Facts Only.